You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast. Today we're going to be going over all the big cricket news from the last week. England have announced their squad for the New Zealand series. The Sandpaper scandal, it's back. I'm so excited that we get to talk about Sandpaper again. And I'm afraid to say, boys, that AB de Villiers has decided to officially, for the last time ever, 100% this time, call it a day in international cricket. Then a little bit later in the show, we're going to talk about our World Test Championship dream team. But before we get to the news, we should introduce ourselves, shouldn't we? I'm Jack Hope. Hello, everyone. I'm with Ross Legg. How are you doing, Ross?
Nice to be back. It's weird not doing daily shows. Not doing one for a week has felt, I don't know, like an absence. So well, I'm glad we're back.
Yeah. No, it's been difficult not doing this every day. And we're here with Max Rowe Brown as usual. How are you doing, Max Rowe Brown?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good. I'm a little disappointed at how the weather's been behaving lately. It's been getting in the way of some cricket that I wanted to play.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about that. There was quite a funny incident, wasn't there, Ross? Yesterday we were supposed to have an 8-a-side match, and there was lightning across London. So our league sent round the lightning rule, which did not include if there's lightning, cancel the cricket match.
And every other bit on there: run for cover, don't go stand near other people, don't wear a metal hat. Like there's all kinds of stuff on there. Which just say if there is a thunderstorm, probably don't play cricket.
Yeah, that's what it needed. We have a question of the week. Ross, this is actually inspired by one of our listeners, Sandy. He asked thoughts from Ross on Harry Kane leaving Spurs. We're going to twist that and we're going to make it about cricket. With Harry Kane leaving Spurs, Ross, obviously you're devastated. If we apply the same concept to cricket, if any cricketer were to decide they're going to hand in their transfer request to cricket and leave the sport of cricket, who would you be most upset to see go, Ross?
So I think this is a difficult one because now obviously we've started watching the IPL for 2 minutes and think we're experts, and people who've watched it for 15 years and still think Sunil Gavaskar would make a good T20 player. I think I'll be pretty sad to actually see some of those players actually go, like the likes of someone like Kieran Pollard, the likes of Andre Russell, the likes of Chris Gale. Actually, those kind of guys actually leaving the sport is probably going to be quite big because I've actually loved the rise of T20 cricket. I think it's actually made the sport better. I think it's made it more accessible. It's made it more exciting as well. And I think it's also added kind of, it's ensured that Test cricket kind of upped its game as well. So, I think those kind of big name players are going to be quite sad to see go. But the biggest one is Johnny Bairstow. Like when he goes, ultimately it's going to be something that we're going to lose a lot of content on that part. Like there is a piece where he is going to be in every England team from now until he's 45. It's going to be a sad day for the podcast.
Max, he hasn't done to you what he's done to me, has he?
yes, he has. I cannot believe it. Well, okay, so I'll pivot quickly. Obviously, Johnny Bairstow leaving would be a huge disappointment for all of the reasons that you say, Ross. But actually, his partner in crime at the top of the order for Sunrisers Hyderabad, I would also be very sorry to see go because every great production needs a pantomime villain. And David Warner provides the perfect pantomime villain for cricket with his general sort of aura of being an average bloke, the leading the Sandpaper stories back, and let's face it, apparently he was the man who instigated it all, and also we can't forget the terrible Antipodean moustache that he still sports. So for all those reasons, he makes the perfect pantomime villain, and any theatrical production would be worse off for losing such a good focal point of anger. So there's mine.
I mean, honestly,
you've got to say, David, what you did actually say his name, did you?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
No, did you? Okay.
I still can't look past Bairstow. I just think he's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't he? Like he, he gets an annual go in the Test arena. It's always a disaster, people find it hilarious. We get to talk about how bad England are at selecting players, and it's probably 3 to 5 hours of content on a 6-monthly cycle. Johnny Bairstow in the test arena, and that's difficult. It's difficult to produce content in cricket. There's been 2 weeks without any cricket I really want to watch or anything going on at sort of the top level. And look, we're filling the time with Johnny Bairstow. We're literally doing it right now. So you've got that, but then on the flip side of that, you've also got one of England's all-time great ODI batters, if not the greatest, doing his thing, and that will have to come to an end at some point, and it will be really sad when it does. So I can't on the fly. I can't come up with anyone better, and actually, honestly mean it. It is Johnny Bairstow. I'd be devastated if Johnny Bairstow handed in a transfer request and decided to go and play squash. Or what would he even do if he wasn't a cricketer?
I don't know, but whatever it was, he'd get picked for England.
Right. Do we have any messages for our listeners, Ross Legg?
I need to sort my hair out. This is an absolute travesty on here. Yes, we are now sponsored by Woodstock Cricket, and if you need a cricket bat, you should go to their website. Max has been doing some videos in the background for them that will be released very shortly. So hurry up and get that done, Max. I think there is a piece where we need to encourage people to follow and subscribe to the Cricket Pod on YouTube, and also follow us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Max, is your finger in a splint there?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a message.
Is that a cricket-related injury, or what's happening?
Yeah,
there?
that was from that first game of the season.
In the middle of the listener messages, this is when you decide to do it. The last thing you need to know is that you can head over to Patreon and you can give to the Cricket Podcast directly. We've moved from 6 to 7 in the last week. We're slowly, 10's our target. 10 is our target.
That's a 17% gain.
Exactly. So let's have a smaller than 17% gain. Go from 7 to 8 next week. Be the hero. And, subscribe to us on different platforms. Be a cross-format player. Be over Spotify.
Player, nice. Yeah, I like that. And you should like this video. Do it. Do it now.
Do all of these things. We will take a quick break and then we will be back with the cricket news. Welcome back, everyone. It's the cricket news segment, the lesser seen cricket news segment. Like when we were doing daily podcasts, we were actually a bit too fast for the news at that point. Now we have to react, and react we shall. Shall we start with England's Test squad for New Zealand? That seems like the biggest news in the world of cricket, Max.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, and it precedes probably the most important cricket that is coming up soon, with the World Test Championship on the horizon. But before that, England taking on New Zealand in a 2-test series, and unfortunately there aren't that many surprises in the squad, so we'll just have to make do with what we've been given. But the big news obviously is that Jofra Archer's elbow is not better, so he played for Sussex, bowled a bit in the first innings, didn't come back for the second innings, and has been officially ruled out of the series while they go away and have a look at his elbow and possibly look at a surgical remedy. So that's bad news for everyone, and but maybe good news for someone else in the English squad.
I'd be sad if Jofra Archer handed in a transfer request to cricket, actually. I feel like there's a lot more to come from Jofra, and this elbow injury.
We've only
really holding him up.
Just scratched the surface of Jofra.
Yeah. Do we know anything else about the injury? Have they, or is it still a secret injury?
As far as I know, it's still a very secretive elbow injury. Perhaps he's been playing too much tennis in his off time. I don't know, but
yeah. Well,
what's the rules of like getting like carbon fiber joints as a cricketer? Is there a bit now where they've
like having your bones replaced?
Yeah. Is there a bit like where they've now gone into that world where that they can make a better thing? So they could improve Jofra. They could save his elbow and actually make him faster. Is that
bionic?
Yeah, is that? But like, it's still under the skin. So is that allowed in cricket? Like, because you're not allowed a carbon fiber bat, but no one's ever said anything about a carbon fiber ball and socket joint in your elbow or whatever it might be.
Good question, Ross.
Hinge-
How
hinge
good
joint.
would the Terminator be at cricket?
Yeah. Would
Pretty
carbon
good, I
fiber be
imagine.
a better ball and socket joint than
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
better
organic
question.
master, though? No.
Probably we need to answer that before we go to the Terminator question. But ultimately, that's what Ross is asking: is
Yeah.
would the
Ross-
Terminator be good at cricket?
Well, Ross, that's your homework. Why don't you go away and have a look and see what the future is for bionic cricketers? In the meantime, in the present day, we'll go back to the England squad. So no Jofra Archer, and as we already knew, the England IPL contingent will not be featuring as they rest from their not now bubble but team environment. That's very important. We must remember that it's now called a team environment. So that means we get to see James Bracey and Ollie Robinson come into the squad, potentially earning their first caps, and Craig Overton comes back in, having featured 4 times for England previously, and the rest is all very much as you would expect and unchanged from what we've seen before. So as I said, no real surprises. But Sibley was the other doubt. So he had a broken finger. He's in the squad. He's got a couple of games coming up with Warwickshire with the potential to show that he's fine to play. So given that we've got Sibley back and pretty much, aside from Archer, the bowling contingent, Wood, Stone, Anderson, Broad are all in there. Ross, do you see any or many of Bracey, Robinson, and Craig Overton getting a sniff in the side?
I hope so, because two test series in general are pointless. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. So they're kind of like, this isn't a B team from England, but it's not an A team, is it? Well, there's a couple of our best players missing. I think New Zealand will try and treat it as importantly as possible, but I'm not really sure who's actually going to get a look in. I think if you've put in the likes of Rory Burns, you've put in Dom Sibley, you're going to put in Zach Crawley. I think that's what they want their top 3 to be. James Bracey is a good understudy. Jack, question?
You said this about Moeen Ali for the Sri Lanka and India tour. You kept saying, why would you take Moeen Ali if they're not going to play him? And then they just didn't play him. And then they played him once and they sent him home. And then they brought him back for the ODIs. And you were like, or the T20s, and you were like, why would you take him if you're not going to play him? And they didn't play him. So
I'm
difference
calling now, Jack. Key difference now is that the big-brained Ed Smith is no longer in the picture.
Maybe.
So what you're saying is just that logically, like, we need to reevaluate what we're talking about here. So it just needs to be a case of Ed Smith's gone, whether the new Chris Silverwood is in play, right?
Well, we don't. That is a good point. So England, for people who haven't been paying attention, have fired their head of selectors. I don't know if they said that exactly, but they did. They fired Ed Smith.
Yeah.
And now the coach, I believe, or the coach and captain combined, or maybe the director of cricket, maybe James Taylor as scout. But I think they've said the coach will, effectively be responsible and accountable for picking the England squad as well as picking the final 11. So yeah, Ross, I guess the thing to remember, obviously the wild card factor with Ed Smith was that we don't really know how much of a say he had in picking the final level. But I sort of don't know if it wasn't just being picked by Chris Silverwood anyway before. So you didn't really ask a question, and I've rambled about something else.
Well, I've got a thing here, Jack. So do you think, so I'm going to deflect Max's one. So the people who could come into that side, with Wokes, with Stokes kind of both being out, actually England's all-rounder lineup actually means this is quite an imbalanced side, potentially. So I think there could be a route in for someone like Craig Overton, who's actually quite a handy lower order batsman. He's probably not an all-rounder, but he's no mug with a bat. Or England just going to go with a really long tail in Broad, Anderson, Leach, and Ollie Robinson?
Well, I think Ollie Robinson can bat. So in my pretend team, I had Ollie Robinson. He averages 20 odd in first class cricket, which is acceptable. Might be a bit low for a number 8, but like I feel my view is that we kind of know what we're going to get from Craig Overton, and it's a little bit like, a slightly worse right-armed Sam Curran. So where's the really big upside there? We know as soon as Wokes is available that place in the side is gone, or if Curran's available, that place in the side is gone. Do you want to test your third string number 8 seeming all rounder, or do you want to try someone who might feature because their bowling talent alone is good enough? And Robinson's numbers, like in first-class cricket, are off the charts. They're like the best in the world. It's only England, partly because their selection is sometimes a bit mystical, and partly because Broad and Anderson hold down two of the seaming spots. Only in England would he not have had a go. And I think you kind of get the opportunity now to play a guy, you know, maybe his batting average could be slightly better in first-class cricket. If it was 25 instead of 20, he'd be nailed on to play instead of Overton. But I feel like it's the coward's way out to pick Craig Overton. And for that reason, he probably will play. Because...
I was going to say. Yeah. And for that reason, that is probably what will happen. I'd really like to see Ollie Robinson in the side. I think it's pretty unfortunate that he's not had a go yet. They've been, you know, we've been around the revolving door of people coming in and bowling seam in England and playing a test or two. And I think the fact that he hasn't had a go is unfortunate on his part. So I think it would be nice to see an unproven quantity at test level get a chance, aside from someone we've seen before and we know is, you know, okay. The only other thing that I sort of had to highlight was around the spinners. So there's only Jack Leach has been picked as a spinner in that squad, which to me suggests they may not even bother, especially with what you said, Ross, about England's side being much more unbalanced now with the absence of Stokes-Wokes and Curran. You know, that does leave a bit of a gap in the lower order batting. So do you think we might just go seamers and allow Root and Lawrence to chuck down some part-time pie to make up the numbers?
I think that's a pretty horrible statement about Joe Root's golden arm bowling. And I mean, Dan Lawrence is I think he's a pretty handy off spinner actually, but yeah, not as good as we are. I think I'll be. Where are the games being played? Is it
the first is at Lords and the second is at Edgbaston.
Yeah. You could easily see England just going all out seam at Lords.
I can see that happening as well. And it would be like, what did England learn from the summer or the spring have been absolutely dominated spinning conditions? The first thing you do is drop your spinner. Like, that would be
just give up.
That would be absolutely vintage England. I don't think they should do it. I think they should probably pick Leach, and I don't really see how not playing a spinner rebalances the side, other than like maybe it allows Craig Overton in for a different reason. But again, it goes back to that point. It's like, really, what is Craig Overton offering England? Like an insurance policy to an insurance policy is effectively what he is. And I think Leach, you know, took 27 wickets in India or something like that, didn't he? It was a good.
He was one of England's best players, I think, on the tour. But there also comes back to the question, the age-old question: Anderson and Broad, are they going to play together? I mean, you've got Mark Wood and Ollie Stone, who are out-and-out pacers. Jofra Archer is out the side. Are they going to try and play a bit of a blitzer in that bowling lineup, Max?
I don't think so. I think it'll be it might be Wood in one and Stone in the other. I think it all It depends for me on how much importance England place on this series. And I think for New Zealand, they'll come at it. Like you said, they'll be treating it quite importantly, because it's pretty much for them. It's the run up to the World Test Championship final, so they're going to be wanting to get their best side out and get them ready for that game against India. From an England point of view, like you say, it's two tests. Half of the first team aren't around, and you know, we've got an opportunity to look at some new people. It's a question of whether we decide to go and mix things up a bit, or just once again drag people on to let them sit in the team environment for a month and then send them packing back home, while all the counties go, well, they could have been playing for us.
Well, I'm just upset there's not been a left field selection. I miss the days when Jason Roy was going, I'm going to bat 6 in the Ashes. So I'm going to open I miss those kind of things.
Well, I'm disappointed that Parkinson's not in there again.
Well, I don't. But he definitely wasn't going to play. He wasn't going to jump Leach. And they're not going to play 2 spinners at Lords in June. So there's no space for him. Anderson was in The Guardian this week saying that he's going to play forever. Did you read that? He I don't think he set limits on it, but he compared what he does to Tom Brady. And I think Tom Brady's 45 this year, obviously won the Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's 7 more years of James Anderson. Jared Kimber was talking about this. He said if England can keep him bowling more than about 83 miles an hour, then that actually could happen. What do you reckon? I don't know this, but like, what do you reckon is the scope to keep Jimmy bowling at 83 miles an hour? And presumably you can't use him away from home. Like
maybe
you could just use him as the home bowler, couldn't you, Max?
Maybe it's carbon fiber joint replacements. Maybe that's what we need.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I'm sure he'll give it a go. He seems very determined to carry on. But I do think
there'll be many more unfortunate county players missing out on their spot in the England squad as Anderson rolls into his 67th year in an England shirt, taking his 1,300th wicket.
If you're talking purely about using him as like a home bowler or a bowler for home, maybe South Africa, maybe New Zealand, then I think maybe West Indies, then I think it in theory could work. But what is in a sense, the end game? Do you just keep going with that? Like, because he's not going to be like, oh, don't worry about taking me to Australia. I doubt. Anyway, maybe he is. Maybe he would have that discussion. But it's not really viable to take an 83 mile an hour bowler to the whacker where it doesn't swing.
No.
Is it?
Well, I think it's one of those. It's like a rite of passage. Like his best mate Graham Swan got to retire in disgrace in the middle of a game, pretty much. So maybe it is a case of going, I want to go out like that, and like a complete blaze of steaming turds. That's what the way he wants to go out in.
Sure. I think that's sort of England covered. I imagine at some point we'll talk about England again.
Yeah, we can probably do a preview, can't we? Closer to the time.
Something like that. Milk it for all it's worth. Shall we talk about the Sandpaper scandal? Because I was worried that we weren't ever going to be able to talk about this again, Ross.
No, it is the gift that keeps on giving. The most one of the most pointless things in the world. Like everybody in the history of cricket, like Test cricket, I think. Like if you're a bowler, most teams have kind of tampered with the ball in whether it's a legal way or an illegal way. That is just what has happened, I think, is my kind of take on it. Nobody in this side thought that Cameron Bancroft, David Warner and Steve Smith were the only people who knew what was going on. And Cameron Bancroft who was and for 9 months he was a pretty junior person in the side. It was a pretty harsh thing for him, I think. But he spoke to the Guardian this week and said that it's pretty self-explanatory that all the bowlers pretty much knew what was happening. And to me, that does a number of different things. One is absolutely hilarious. Two, throwing your teammates under the bus like that because you're a bit pissed off or like you maybe didn't make a team or something like that, I just think is brilliant. And the fact that Josh Hazlewood, Mitchell Stark, Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon have released a joint statement together saying he's lying is just... Oh, for an England fan, that is just basically for an India fan, for any team who doesn't like Australia, they must be absolutely lapping this up because it's another like just embarrassing saga and a pretty pointless one. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I like the bit where Australia or the Cricket Australia released a statement saying they'd contacted Cameron Bancroft because he might have new information on the incident. It was as though like. What he'd just discovered that the bowlers knew, or what did they think was going on there? They're an absolute bunch of charlatans. Everybody knows that everybody knew, and everybody knows that the investigation was a bit of a farce, and everyone knows that the bans they handed out were ridiculous. It's miraculous that they've managed to string this along for so long, to be honest, and. I don't think there's a resolution in the future. I think
this is a good bit. So, Max, can you think of anything that where someone has committed so much to an action that they can't go back on, kind of like in a politics kind of vibe that is similar to what this is? That at some point it just becomes increasingly funny of how wrong that decision was, but they have to completely buy into what's happened. Can you think of any situation like that?
Well, I think at the moment there seems to be the fact that England decided not to close the borders to India when all the COVID was going on, and now they're saying that the reason they didn't close the border was because the data suggested that that India was safer than Pakistan and Bangladesh, and then people found the data and said that that's not true, and they're still carrying on saying that that what they said was in fact the truth. So that's just
Straight for the
little-
COVID one there. I'd have gone with like Bill Clinton and the blowjob, but
Nah.
you've gone-
No, I'm thinking
straight on the death train with
I'm
Max.
thinking contemporary. I'm thinking contemporary. I want, we've got to try and take down our overlords in this country before we start looking at things that happened.
Could
in
have
the
gone
past.
with Richard Nixon and Watergate as well.
Trump's a good
plenty-
one. Yeah,
there's plenty better.
Brexit's another one.
Yeah. No, I've gone niche. I fully accept that I've gone niche.
It is recent though. Well done, Matt.
Peter Odemwingie turning up on transfer deadline day. That's probably another one that he's committed to. Couldn't go back after that, could he? But this is the bit. I think that Cricket Australia went so overboard with what they tried to achieve and tried to kind of salvage from a PR point of view that it's beyond repair, and it is just hilarious that it keeps coming. Like every now and again, just rears its ugly head again. It's brilliant.
Yeah, Jeff Lemon did a tweet on this, and it was quite good, and I think sums it up pretty well. So Jeff Lemon said, "This resurrection of the Sandpaper story is comical, really. Every part of it we already knew. The investigation was superficial. The idea that no one had tampered before wasn't credible, and Cricket Australia actively avoided finding out any more than it had to." And that basically is what happened. And I think because of the way they handled that, Joe, he wrote a really good book on it, by the way, Steve Smith's Men. But because of the way they've handled it, Cricket Australia, they're just exposed to this constant drip on this issue for as long as it goes on. It's every time someone says who should be the next Australian captain, they have to have a debate about Sandpaper. Every time Cameron Bancroft, does an interview with anyone, they have to talk about Sandpaper. Every time someone talks about Mitchell Stark's bowling figures before and after that point, have to talk about Sandpaper. It's if they'd sorted the problem out properly in the first place, maybe we wouldn't have to, but they didn't, and it is funny.
Yeah, I can see it actually meaning that Steve Smith doesn't get the captaincy. I think there is a bit where they just might not be able to take the shame of it, and it will have to go to Pat Cummins. But if it comes out that Pat Cummins is all about it, like, we're just going to have to give it back to Smithy, aren't we? We're going to have to give it back to Smudger. So
maybe that's the long game. Maybe that's what they're going for. It's all part of an arch plan to get Smith back in as captain, and then they have to ban all the bowlers just in time for the Ashes. That'd be good.
That would be good. But no doubt Dougie Bollinger would come back in and get England out.
Peter Siddle would rise from the grave. And
anyway, shall we move on to our World Test Championship 11? Or
we've got to talk about De Villiers. De Villiers was the last piece of news. So De Villiers, if you've been living under a rock, has had a chat with Mark Boucher, the head coach of South Africa's men's team, obviously. He has come to the conclusion, and this was his statement, that once and for all, his retirement will remain final. I, for one, look forward to the speculation about his return before the 2022 World Cup. Before we get into that, are you surprised that De Villiers won't be back for the near future for this year's T20 World Cup, Max?
I'm a little bit actually, because just the way he was performing in the IPL while it was going on, just showing that he absolutely still has all of the attributes to be the best T20 cricketer in the world, and the fact that not very long ago he publicly said that he's perfectly happy to come back and be the Messiah. I thought it was all set in stone for him to come back and make a starring role for South Africa in the World Cup, but. Yeah, I guess he's more interested in the domestic side of things now. So again, like you say, we'll just have to wait till next year for it to come back around. But I think ultimately it's probably for the best for South Africa and their ability to move on and build a squad for the future.
I can't put my finger on whether he's an ignorant, selfish prick, or he's just he's just a bit misunderstood and kind of just like, look, I don't actually need to do it. Like, I'm not. Is it just a case of being really self-absorbed and liking all the attention and taking that starlight away from kind of the up and coming players of South Africa, or was it a genuine thing of going, actually, could I come back here and have a bit of a swan song and kind of go out on Well, it could well have been glorious. They don't have an awful team, and he's incredible. Jack, what do you think on that?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one to say. So I was going to compare the whole situation to Kevin Peterson's end of career with England, but not really from the point of view of whether it's selfish or not. I was going to say that the temptation from South African cricket, as it was with England in 2014 or whatever it was, has to be pretty strong. Like, you've seen the guy perform at the highest level. He's still going to go around the world performing at, pretty much the highest level. He's eligible. He's made noise about wanting to play for you. And it's effectively at this point, from a South African cricket point of view, it's about whether they want to deal with the headache of him coming in and out of the side and being a little bit disruptive.
Well, it's probably a better distraction than what's going on at the moment, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, what do you say to Rassie van der Dussen? Sorry, mate. Like, well played the last couple of years, but because de Villiers is back and because we've got a quota system, you're done. You're not coming to the World Cup. That's effectively the call. Something like that is the decision they would have to make. And is that fair? Is de Villiers being selfish by talking about that? I think it's probably not fair on Rassie van der Dussen. To not that it would necessarily be him, but on whoever it was that's in that team that gets kicked out for de Villiers. And it might actually be a little bit selfish from de Villiers. On the other hand, if you truly wanted to put the best South African side out there from all the eligible players, he would be certainly in that team. If you wanted to put the world best 11 out there, he'd be in that team. Like, if you wanted to put the best T20 batter out there, he'd be the guy you put out there probably. So it's obviously super complex. And from his point of view, I mean, like, you do wonder, had he been in Faf du Plessis' shoes, for instance, would he have continued as a T20 player for South Africa? I think quite possibly he would have, but maybe the option wasn't available in 2014 when he retired, for the first time, to only continue in one format. So it's not a super easy situation, is it?
No, I agree with that. And I think there could be the opposite of what I said in terms of the selfless act of it. And there might have been like, do you know what? I would have loved to come back to play for South Africa. But actually, the likes of Rassie van der Dussen, all that, because they deserve their shot kind of thing. It might have just been, there might have been that. It's not come out and said that, right?
Yeah, that's true. We don't know what the discussion was, do we? No. I do think it's probably good if you're a fan of the IPL, though. Jared Kimber wrote a really good article on him. Again, there's 2 mentions for Jared Kimber in this show.
He wrote
a really good article on him on ESPN's website, talking about how the way, de Villiers has effectively managed the last half of his career has meant that he's just got so much less wear and tear on his body versus some of the other players knocking around the IPL and some of the other players in sport. I think he was comparing it to how, actually he was doing like a big cross sport comparison. It was a really interesting read. But I think, de Villiers at 37, I thought probably the best batter in the IPL this year. I mean, Pollard had that innings, didn't he, which was pretty astonishing. And a couple of other guys looked good. But just the way de Villiers mastered Chennai sort of set him apart from everyone else. So I think we could be in for that for a few more years, which is pretty exciting, you have to say.
And he'll prove that longevity is something that you can do when you don't just kind of continue to demote yourself down the order and hide away from the people who are bowling a bit quickly. But we'll leave that.
All right, lads, should we take a quick break and then we're going to come back with our World Test Championship 11. That's going to be a player from every single team in the World Test Championship and 2 from the 2 teams that made the final. I think that'll be quite good fun. So see you in 2 minutes.